So, I mean, this is going to be a very interesting... This would be a very interesting game. I'm really interested in this game. Too interested in this game. Why am I letting myself get too interested? I mean, F4, a very interesting move. E4, very... So many interesting moves here. This game was very interesting.
Now, given all the interest right now in Hikaru Nakamura and Vladimir Kramnik, I thought I'd have a look here at the games they've played against each other on chess.com. And this is what I found. So 6 games showing in the history here. I'm going to take a look today at a very interesting game, as you just heard. The second one they ever played in Title Tuesday. But just before I show you that one, have a quick look at this one, because it gives some context for the game I'm about to show. Now, this is the first time they ever played, and Hikaru plays this bomb cloud. It's round 11. He couldn't win anyway, so he was kind of just having some fun, right? And he gets absolutely smashed off the board. You know, don't play the bomb cloud like this against a former world champ, because they'll punish you. Unless you're Magnus, then you can do what you want. Well, to be fair, so can Hikaru. But okay, this game, he gets smashed to bits. It's 21 moves. Vlad takes Hikaru down. Don't disrespect me. Now, let's fast forward to this game. So this was played 2 weeks later, also Title Tuesday, also round 11, but there's a lot more on the line here, which is why after e4 from Kramnik, Hikaru goes c5, a proper defense. Now, Hikaru here is playing for first place, and I'll reveal what actually happens and who wins and that kind of thing at the end of the video. But first, let's dive into this very interesting game. So we get knight c6 on the board, d4 takes, knight takes, and now e5, initiating the Kalashnikov variation. Now, of the 14,500,633 games in chess.com, this has only been seen 16.1% of the time. So already Hikaru is just trying to take Vlad out of his mainline book. So we get d6 played. Now this knight develops. This pawn kicks back the knight, and the main line here is b5, but Hikaru goes for a sideline with bishop e6. He references that Parham has played this recently. And after knight c4, looking to re-enter the game, we get rook b8. Does Vladimir know what he's doing here? Well, yes, he plays the best move, knight d5. This has now been seen in about 84.3% of the games, following on from the starting Kalashnikov position. So we get takes on d5, pawn recaptures, and now the knight drops back. And we get this classic case of one side attacking on the queen side here, which is Vladimir Kramnik. He's got the 4 on 3 pawns. Hikaru, for his part, wants to attack on the king side. Now knight f6 pressures the central pawn. This knight hops back and covers. g6, c4, and now a very interesting move from Hikaru. He goes pawn h5, not yet getting his bits out over here, but pushing this one down aggressively, and after castles, he goes bishop h6, slicing down this long diagonal here. So Kramnik carries on with b4, his queenside expansion. We get castles, queen b3, pawn b6 here to keep an eye on c5, bishop b2, knight d7, very logical, looking here, preparing f5, and now Kramnik plays a very strange and interesting move. He goes queen to a3 here, but there's a problem. However, look at Hikaru's clock. So he's got 2 minutes 23. He spends 13 seconds playing pawn a5. Now, any 814.7 ELO rated player and upwards would play that move in a second, because it gives you access to c5 for the knight, and white can't go a3 to cover the pawn. But Hikaru takes 13 seconds on this. Interesting. So we get captures played. Now the knight hits c5. Bishop c3, and after pawn takes on a5, now we get this bishop recapturing, going after the queen. Wasn't the best though. There was bishop takes on e5, but interestingly, Vladimir misses it. You know, he could have undermined that knight, but captures played, queen d7, this one slides back to b4, Hikaru hits the queen with tempo, queen c3, and now he abandons f5 for the moment and brings the rook to the c file, reinforcing this this knight and a3 played. So Hikaru's a pawn down, but he gained access to this square. He's got open lines for his rooks and some attacking ideas. Now we get queen a7, slicing down to that king. So rook ae1 played to reinforce this knight prophylactically, but it wasn't best. Queen c2 a bit better, looking at e4. Now the knight hops to e4. Queen d3 played, but it is a blunder. Can Hikaru spot this tactic? What do you play here to win the game? Maybe not win, but be doing really, really well. Well, the move to play, Hikaru thinks about it, is knight takes on f2. But he misses this tactic. Very interesting. Now, if you take with the rook here, well, these pieces are converging. You instantly win the piece back. What about king takes? Well, then there's this awesome shot of rook takes on c4. Knight's pinned, of course. And if queen takes, that is literally a checkmate. That's a nice one. So you can't touch it. You know, you have to do something else like king g1. But then there's this. And okay, the whole thing starts collapsing. Just beautiful for black. So coming back here, that was the best move, but f5 played. Now bishop d1, and this knight hops back to c5. We're still following at this point game 16 from the 2000 World Chess Championship match between Kramnik and Kasparov, which is just incredible. So queen e2 now played. We get queen b6. Bishop c2, and now Hikaru berates himself on stream. He should have bounced to a6 first. You know, what's this triangulation about? You do that with a king, but not a queen. Very interesting play. King h1 now played. Pawn h4 gains a bit more space, and now Kramnik drops back with this knight. He's re-maneuvering. Hikaru goes knight d7, attacking the c4 pawn, defended, and now bishop g7. This sniper hits the long diagonal. Bishop b3 played, knight c5, move 33. We're still following roughly 1.39 million games from this position. Very, very popular line. So bishop a2 drops back from the attack, and now e4. Hikaru ummed and ahed about what was the most interesting move. e4, f4, king h8, bishop f8, but he goes for this one, opens that diagonal, attacking this knight. We now get bishop b1, keeping an eye on this square. You know, the knight might be hopping. Rook e8 now played, coming onto that file, thinking about tactics, and f3 played. Best move to undermine this chain. Now you should capture here, but it wasn't played. Hikaru goes knight c8, but he leaves an undefended rook. This is a guy meant to be exceptional at puzzle rush, making these crazy moves. Very interesting. And what you should play here is pawn takes on e4, because after knight takes, there's the very simple queen to f3. Now, yes, you leave an entire piece hanging, but then there's the very clear and obvious bishop takes on e4. Very simple tactics here for guys of this caliber. Interesting they missed it. And now if pawn captures, well, you dive in with the queen and check. If rook captures, you chop off here, you've got the same problems. White's doing great here, but they both missed it. We get bishop takes on c5, ruining the structure. Now this pawn captures, but knight d6 is what Hikaru has prepared. No time for e5 because rook and bishop cover the square. So we see queen f2 stepping off the e-file, targeting these dark squared pawns, but abandoning c4. Takes is played. Now knight d1. After queen takes, there's knight e3, and this is a sneaky move because after queen d4, you know, knights are excellent blockaders, but they're also tricky because after Kramnik captures here, if you touch this pawn, bang, you've ran into a backwards retreating knight move. Those are the trickiest to spot. So you don't touch the pawn. Rook f8 was played by Hikaru. We get knight g4, now takes on f1, and we start seeing some mass liquidation. Bishop recaptures. Now there's a threat to mate the king, so the queen covers the rank. c4 played, and although Hikaru's a pawn down, these ones are running. We're still following Kramnik Kasparov, game 16 2000, plus another 814,000 games by this point. Now here Kramnik apparently apparently should run the pawn or go bishop c2, but he plays h3 to start with, give the king some room. Now we get pawn c3, and after bishop c2, Hikaru goes queen d2. And what's really incredible about this position is it's basically level and we're still at move 48. How are the guys doing it? We get captures on d2. Pawn recaptures, a4 now played, the bishop covers the square, but here comes Hikaru's steed, hopping into the game looking to support the pawn. Now you can check here and start going after this pawn, but Kramnik's got an eye on this one, you know, very dangerous stuff, could be on the cards. So I was about to draw it to here, but to here is the best move, sorry. And now we see that one played, pushing d1 to make a baby girl. So Kramnik going for this counterplay. We get king g7, Hikaru not rushing this. And now pawn a6. By the way, the reason this knight never came back to try and defend is this move, bishop c5 check. If you ever put the knight here, it was getting pinned anyway. So we get king to f1 played. Now the queen is made. Bishop recaptures, knight takes on d1, and look at this, move 55, the evaluation bar's got it absolutely level. Very, very interesting game. Now Kramnik goes d6, the pawn's untouchable or this one starts running. So the king marches over, and here in time pressure, Kramnik cracks, because what should he play? Well, knight e5 check. And because this pawn has not advanced, the king can't step this way, so you have to do this or king e6, and then you can do this, distract the bishop, and then push d7 check. King goes, and now there's knight c6 check. Wherever that king went to, it was going to be in the checking zone. Now you pick up the bishop. Difference here is it's 2-on-2. This should be a theoretical draw. But coming back here, d7 was played immediately. The king gets in close enough to the pawn. Now knight e5 supports it, but it's one move too late because the king was able to step in. So after knight e3 check, which was now played, well, here the king steps up. It doesn't want to step into the bishop's diagonal. We get king e2, knight takes on g2, a7, and this is usually lost in about 93.8% of endgames when you have this combination of pieces. So there is still a slither of a chance. Knight f4 check. Great move, using the barrier of bishop and pawn so the king can't step up. It steps backwards, the bishop takes here. Now we get this check, that piece drops, but Hikaru's foreseen this because he's got the extra pawn now, and this is simply a mop-up job for a 3600 plus player. Look how the knight jumps in, the pawn pushes, he's about to make a queen, that ends the game in resignation. And this is what happened with regards to this tournament standings.
Oh, Dubov won! No! Dubov won! No! No! I mean, I played such a great game to win, but Dubov wins. Oh, that's a tragedy. It's still a good win. I mean, at least it makes up for last week. Now, of course, I get to put out a... I'll do a recap later. I'll talk about how I lost a Bond Cloud game 2 weeks ago. Went into the America's Cup with a new repertoire, new openings. I came back and I got my revenge by winning here. But this game was very interesting. Like, we both made mistakes, but I don't know what was happening. Somewhere around here, I think I was actually maybe already better here. Oh, a5 was right. I was supposed to take and play knight f5 and use D's knights. These knights are very powerful, but I wasn't sure.
I hope you enjoyed that one. It was not easy to keep a straight face. That was a bit of fun, but still an absolutely fantastic game. I hope you thought so. Thanks very much for watching. Do hit subscribe to never miss a future video, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.